think I'm frozen, but can you hear me? Because I see I'm frozen. All right, well, I'm frozen, but I'm going to keep on rolling with it. This is why you need to support independent media. Go ahead and support, ring the bell, drop some money, super chat us up, because this is what keeps us going. Even when the screen is frozen, you are tuning to CTN Media. We're changing the narrative, and we're doing it with you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You have tuned into 7 Generations Black. Yes, it's time for Takeover Tuesday, so go ahead and drop this in someone's DM. Have them join us today. We want to hear from you. Don't forget to write in the comments, ring the bell, and then go on over to YouTube and subscribe. Subscribe to CTN Media. We need to keep reaching our community. You're in season 6 of 7 Generations Black. We're so excited to have you here. Welcome to 7 Generations Black, a podcast proud to equip and inform you, clear your lens, and present you with a new perspective. And let me introduce my dynamic team. I'm not doing myself, and hopefully they're not frozen, because I don't know, maybe I'll just be frozen by myself. This is weird. All right, welcome to the team, 7 Generations Black, with a phenomenal panel: Theo, EJ Wilson, LETHOL, Jice Johnson, and my guy H-So is not here, but he might pop up at some time. I'm your host, Shay J, and we are 7 Generations Black. Again, you're tuned into season 6, so welcome back. Thank you for rocking with us. Drop this in someone's DM. We're going to have some dope conversations today. As always, you know the panel is super unbiased, so just tune in. Today's conversation is around Black parenting. Parenting as
Shay sounds so enthusiastic about her introduction. It's amazing, I promise. Unfortunately, we all can't hear it. So.
You can't hear me?
We weren't quite sure when to just jump in and be like, well, actually. But that was an amazing intro, because I felt your energy come through in that intro. You're listening to 7 Generations Black. I'm going to give Shay a moment to get her camera together and get her audio together. We're talking about Black parenting. I don't have the whole introduction written out, because technically that's what Shay's here for. So we're going to keep it rolling. We are going to talk about what Black parenting looks like headed into the future. I guess we can start with some of the things that are going on. You can hear me okay, Theo? Okay.
Yes, yeah. I can definitely hear you.
Okay, yep. So I don't know what was going on with Shay, but that's okay. Go ahead, Shay, work it out. We'll be right here when you get that together. So we want to talk about the future of Black parenting and thinking about all the things that are going on. There is a lot happening right now, and I'm not 100% sure which direction Shay was getting ready to take this, because she's our fabulous host and she was gonna send us off in a direction. So I'm just gonna wing it and figure out what direction we're getting ready to go in. But with that being said, I think there's a lot that's happening in the world right now, and thinking about what that looks like, from the perspective of parenting, there we go. And yeah, what does that look like in terms of parenting? So there's a few things. One of the things that we know happens is that we have experienced a lot of youth violence popping up over the summer, and it certainly is getting hot. And I think with parents that have had children, kind of cooped up, in and out, school has been on, school has been off. There's low, rates of return to the school system right now for a number of different reasons. We have vaccinations coming out for our young ones, and what we think about those things. I think there's just a lot of space to kind of talk and dive into what it looks like from the perspective of parenting in this day and time, and in particular, what it looks like for the Black community to be parenting. So we have 3 parents here that cover a wide range of children, from little babies all the way up to grown babies with grandchildren.
Don't call them babies. I don't call them motherfuckers babies.
Yeah.
That part. So there you have it. So
love you, babies.
Let's start with LETHOL. What are your thoughts? Or hey, Shay, you're back. Hey, girlfriend.
Am I real?
Jump in there with, yeah, look, we can see you, we can hear you.
Okay, all right, this is a good start.
Yeah, just start off by asking whatever your first question was. We already took care of the other shit.
Thanks, Theo. Way to welcome me back to the stage. I appreciate that. I guess my first question really, and I don't know where you guys have started in this parenting thing, but I'm just thinking about how high this cost is going to be for the prolonged period of remote learning, from the rising rates of depression, anxiety, the loss of student learning, and we know it's been heavily hit in the Black communities. And I was, talking with a couple leaders the other day, and it's amazing how a lot of the leaders and teachers, they started really, the conversation goes back when we talk about academic achievement and the gap between your white and your Black students. They are saying the root cause of this is parents. And it was a shock to me to hear this conversation. They were saying, we know a lot of things were going on, but parents are the root cause. They didn't really talk about the complex web of obstacles that really our Black students are facing. And so I want to know, as we're returning back to this, whatever new normal is, what the future of Black parenting looks like. How do we operate with our children? They're saying a lot of children won't even be able to go back to school because their parent is not going to get them the vaccination. I mean, that's one of the key pieces of the conversation that I'm having with leaders right now. When you think about, as a parent moving forward, if your child had to be vaccinated right now and it was something you didn't agree with, are you the one who's hurting their education? There's just so many levels to this. So I just kind of want to know where you guys are at right now as parents. First, I would kind of like to start with you, Jice, because you would be the only one with a student right now that would be going into school at this age that would need vaccinations. I know as you were looking for daycare, that was something that stuck out. And we know that access is different and our decision to take it is different in the Black community. So it's affecting our kids differently. What are your plans when you think about sending your daughter back to school, and what do you think about your son and your daughter? So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I absolutely will not be vaccinating my children for coronavirus or for a whole host of other bullshit that they want you to vaccinate for. Not that I don't believe in the science behind vaccinations, but I certainly don't believe in the distribution of the vaccinations that are here. I don't believe in the number of vaccinations. I don't believe in the safety of the testing of vaccinations in general. That's me. I do, try to educate people on my thoughts around vaccinations without pushing my opinion on them. I know a ton of parents who vaccinate, a ton of people who vaccinate, and I try not to make that, a thing in my conversation. I don't agree with it. I don't want to be pressured into it, and I won't be. So to your point, yes, many of you know I homeschool, or I have been homeschooling for the last 5 years. And as the organization has been continuing to grow, I'm not able to homeschool in the same way, right? And so that poses a big issue for me, because I wholeheartedly adhere to the concept and the idea of, only a fool would let their enemy educate their children, right? And so I have withdrawn from the school system, and now I am considering in which way I will have to engage with the school systems temporarily, is my hope and my prayer, as I think about also how to, to sustain intergenerational wealth, and thinking about what that looks like without having a lot of support. And that's kind of where I sit as a single parent who does co-parent, but predominantly parents my children. And I am, I can definitely would consider myself to be a single parent. So that being said, I did have an incident already where I found a school that I thought I was going to be able to put my children in for the summer for a preschool. And although Colorado is a state that allows for philosophical, medical, and religious exemptions, this institution told me that they would not accept my children because they were only allowing for medical exemptions that came from a doctor. So they would not allow for my philosophical, whatever I just said. They wouldn't allow for it. So I had to find another childcare facility. And so it took me a while. And that also hurt, my operations and what I have going on. So yeah, it's tough thinking about the decisions that you have to make and thinking through what that looks like. Because if Shay, we had a conversation about that as they were telling me, and I couldn't find any. Mind you, I've called several schools, right? So I'm sorry, let me add context to that. I called several schools and couldn't find any with any room. Then I found one with room, and they required vaccinations. So that put me in an awkward position. And of course, they ended up not going there. But for a moment, I did consider, like, I thought about, well, can we do a partial schedule? What can we do, right? And I think that's an interesting position to be put in, as you're thinking about how you're going to care for your family.
Man, and it's crazy because I think you hit something too. The access that our parents have had to make sure that their students have childcare, if parents are returning to work, has been extremely low in the Black communities. A lot of parents have struggled with, do I return back to work or do I take this unemployment check and keep my student at home? It's been this juggling thing that, not that we've already not had enough disparities. Theo, I know you have a young baby, but when you start to think about students getting the opportunity for education and to build a brighter future, but looking at right now, our students are significantly, they say, but if the average white student is 3 months behind, the average Black student is about 7 months behind. And that's right now, just looking at returning back to school and being behind, and it's due to their access and the lack thereof. How do we ensure that our students are taken care of as we move forward out of this pandemic?
Well, I think the first thing we have to understand is that parents are the primary educators, whether you take them to school or not. And most of the things that made me a dope student, I didn't learn at school. I learned from my daddy and mama. You know what I'm saying? This is my dad's birthday. Shout out to Sid Wilson.
Shout out, happy birthday.
You know what I'm saying? But as a parent, I'm looking at, like, we're already planning for this, right? On top of that, there'll be school shootings in the motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's all these things that threaten your kids. And so you have to say, this is the single most important investment I'll ever make is my kid, right? And so how do you make sure that you cover all the bases? And there's just a lot of forethought that Black folks have to will themselves to have, because the situations do not allow for parents to just have that naturally. That bandwidth, that extra little bit of space, that planning capacity, extra little bit of money, right? Jice is evidence of what you have to do in order to pre-plan your child's destiny like that. But it's worth it. It's worth it. And so I think that what I'm most concerned about is, frankly, what I've seen working in the school system. See, I used to be an after school latchkey, teacher / advisor, / coach mentor. And let me tell you something. Kids are repositories for whatever their parents' behavior is. Like, there be behavior problem kids, and I'll be like, we got to call your mom. Then you call the mom, and it's a behavior problem mom. It's just like, you feel me? And like, we're not talking about like the revolutionary conscious disrupting. We're talking about zero impulse control. We're talking about full no understanding of respect. None of that shit, right? So we got a lot of forces against us, but the buck stops with us. And if we don't get it right, it'd be us that be burying the kids too. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of shit that we have to consider as Black folks, and we just have to do it. It's an unfairly high bar. We have to leap it. If our ancestors didn't leap unfairly high bars, we wouldn't be here.
I know somebody's listening to this conversation like, did they really just put it back on us, the parents? Yes, we did. Share this on your network. If you disagree, agree, go ahead, make it in the comments. We want to hear what you have to say. This conversation is definitely for the community. Lethal, I know you went through a couple of rounds from the parenting to the grandparenting to the levels in this thing for you. I think Theo's making a great point. And literally the panels I've been sitting on, the conversation around that is, if our students are low achievers, it's because of the lazy parent. The lazy parent theme has been the complex and that they keep bringing up over and over again.
I ain't saying lazy now.
Stop.
The lazy's a loaded word.
This is the word they're using. This is the thing. Yes. This is the word they're using. They're calling it lazy parenting. And we know, like you said, bandwidth is a huge thing. So we know how we can break this down. I would love to hear when you hear, your mayors and your teachers and your advocates and even your barbershop talk around saying, yeah, the lazy parents don't care like they used to. Lethal, what are you respond to with that?
I hear what you're saying. I'm gonna back it up. First of all, it's incorrect and inappropriate for any so-called leader to put any sort of preponderance of blame or label on a parent. It's unacceptable. In this society that we live in, where fix your face, Theo, fix your face, because you know where I'm going, so fix your face.
I'm gonna fix my face when you fix your information, brother. Like, I'm just trying to figure out what it is. You know what I'm saying?
So you can't constantly have a foot on the neck with psychological effects on the parents, right? Look at Maslow's hierarchy, right? The pyramid of needs, and have the parents down here focusing on and concerning themselves mostly with, right, providing shelter, providing food, providing clothes, providing security, providing safety, and so forth and so on, paying taxes into a corrupt system that does not provide them with benefits on the back end, that provides them with assistance and help, right? While simultaneously, and I'll use DC right here as an example, where they made a rule to whereas a child can get the vaccine without parental consent.
Now that's fuck shit.
You understand what I'm saying to you? So now it is incorrect. It is incorrect. The problem is not lazy parents. The problem is that parents are not aware of their rights and they're not exercising their rights. Those are two different things. Those are two different things. And we need to be very clear about that. And we need to make sure that we are putting out a proper narrative. You understand what I'm saying? Parents are ignorant of their rights. And when you are dealing with a monster of a machine like the American government at whatever level you're talking about, whether it be city, state, or federal, when you're talking about dealing with an institution that was constructed to view our children as resources of the state, not our children, but resources of the state, resources that the government can leverage and use for its benefits, its purposes, its interests, and its equities. You understand what I'm saying? That is a massive system, a massive system. And then you have to also add into the equation, right, the systematic and systemic, right, destruction of the Black family, okay, where you are intentionally saying to mothers, for example, if you want our assistance, fine, we will give you some assistance, but we're going to create a situation to whereas you cannot have an able-bodied man in the household with you while you are receiving assistance from us. That is an indirect path to the destruction of a family. To tell one a parent, we're going to help you, but you got to get that other parent out of your life and out of your children's life. You can't do that. We can't have it both ways. And this is what I was getting at, Theo, when I said it is not solely on the shoulders of parents. And I push back on anyone calling and stating and saying that Black parents are lazy. You understand what I'm saying? Black parents.
I've always agreed that you're correct on that point, because lazy does not encompass no bandwidth.
No,
lazy does not encompass. In fact, the problem about Black parents not being there is that they're working double time.
Yes.
That be the actual issue, right?
Yes.
And so there's these things that go on where there's a co-creation of a bad situation. And it's so crazy because you see kids just be caught in the crossfire, sometimes literally, of a whole lot of systemic breakdowns and social breakdowns as well. So there's social, and then there's the system. Social is on the parents, system is on the government or the educational system that we're participating in. And that co-creation makes whatever the outcome of the kid, right? And so my father sent me to public ass schools for all my journey up until Florida A&M University, right? Public school. In the midst of gangsterism, in the midst of, like, you understand, I'm talking about when the chronic just dropped, you know, when gangs, like when thug life started popping for real, my daddy would send me to school in church clothes. I would look like Steve Urkel. Like, you're talking about a bullying situation. Like, I look like a straight, like, mark-ass dude waiting to get his ass whooped. That's where I learned how to fight, right? But what it was that there was a decision made in the home that even though I was attending public school with some thug-ass dudes, it made sure that a couple of things happened with my destiny that changed the outcome from a lot of my homies. I've seen through my own parenting, even with a fucked up situation, like they was dumping kids from worse schools, like from bad schools into my school. You know what I'm saying? Like the first time I seen crack was at school. You know what I'm saying? Like the first time I seen a kid with a 38 snub nose, it was at the lockers inside the gym. You know what I'm saying? My bullies was bloods. I had to fight these cats all the time. But Pops made it so that there was something to fall back on. He would look at my lessons. He was like, that history ain't right. Go back to school and tell tell your teacher about Benjamin Banneker. Go back to school and tell your teacher about, you know what I'm saying, Denmark Vesey. Tell them about Toussaint Louverture and, you know what I'm saying, Queen Nanny of the Maroons in Jamaica. And so he would supplement my education, right? When the system fails, it's up to the parents to step up even higher. Not fair. It is a co-creative thing, and it's not fair, or else the kid falls through. That's the stakes that we play with. Never been fair. Definitely a co-creation, but if our kids are worth it, we have to step up higher. That's what it is.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. All I'm saying is that we have to frame it. I think that it needs to be framed in a way that is appropriate, that provides, as Jice said in her opening remarks, some context.
Yeah, I believe that's true.
You see what I'm saying? And what we also have to do our best to avoid is the onesies and twosies and anecdotal stories of success. Yes, I'm saying.
Yeah, that's very true.
For example, right? My mother didn't know this at the time, or maybe she did. It was never explained to me, right? But as part of a punishment that I received, or discipline, whichever way you want to call it, right? Depends on the perspective you're looking at it from. From her perspective, it may have been discipline, but from my 8-year-old mindset, it was punishment, right? I called one of my friends a bastard one time at 8 years old, didn't know what the word bastard meant. And my mother educated me on what the word bastard meant and made me aware that not only was I incorrect to call my friend a bastard, but I was the bastard because her and my father were not married. You understand what I'm saying? So I was the child that was born out of wedlock, right? And so as a result of my ignorance of the words that I was using, I ended up receiving gifts of encyclopedia sets and dictionaries and having to spend the entire summer, I was 8 years old going on 9. I had to spend the entire summer reading and writing every single word with every single definition, and then use that word to prove that I understood the definition of the word in a sentence that she had to come home from work and approve first. You understand what I'm saying? This was 8 years old and I'm reading the damn dictionary. This is 8 years old and I'm receiving 3 different encyclopedia sets, one from Britannica, one dealing with Britannica. It was a 4-book set dealing with the genders and sex and boys and girls and the difference in our anatomies and so forth and so on. You understand what I'm saying? That's an anecdote, right? And it ended up turning into something successful because of where I am today, right? But not everyone, okay, is going to have this same type of blessing and or opportunity begotten. You understand what I'm saying? And I think that's what I'm saying. We have to really take a look at how we frame it. And I'm just speaking specifically to any so-called Black leader from our community, from our people, calling our parents lazy. Now, are there some who are lazy? Yes, there are some who are lazy, right? But the overall majority of our people are hardworking.
Overwhelming majority.
I think there's, go ahead.
No. Well, I was like, and I think you brought up something very important. The Black exceptionalism thing, the one-off extreme success. It's like basically saying Usain Bolt can run the 109.58 seconds. Why can't you? You know what I'm saying? Making outliers to be the unfair standard for everybody, not knowing their situation. And so we have to understand that when it comes to administrators, and this is one of the problems with institutional racism. Institutional racism is actually fueled by unconscious bias. It's fueled by unconscious bias. It could be like a supposedly well-meaning teacher, but just never examined how she's been drip-fed images of Black folks being lazy and criminal, right? And so when she sees a boy, a Black boy, showing up in class in a certain way, her bias towards that behavior says, God damn it, he's just lazy, right? Now, we know that there's a myriad of factors. And what I'm saying is that there's a difference between fault and responsibility, right? Fault and responsibility are 2 different things. Fault means you're the original first cause. Black parents, when it comes to systemic failures, are not, I repeat, are not the original first cause. Responsibility is your ability to respond to the cause that's been set in front of you. You know what I'm saying? And so, unfortunately, if the system falls short 100 feet, like 100 feet, we've got to make up for that responsibility 105 feet. We can't just meet the goal line. We have to go past it. And that's what we have to make sure that is inculcated into us, but we can't let them sit there and call us lazy, because that literally sometimes comes from an unconscious racist framework.
And there's a decolonization, like really that kind of leads into what I was thinking anyway, because there's this decolonization that has to happen, right? And that really only comes through consciousness, which is why decolonization doesn't happen en masse within our community. Because, you know, when we're thinking about things like education, and just education as one aspect, but thinking about our children's health, our children's mental health, our own mental health in relation to our children, which is a huge factor that doesn't get, discussed a lot, is the parent and child relationship in mental health, right? But thinking about like their actual, what they're receiving from the school, right? And a whole variety of different things and spaces comes down to our ability to decolonize and detach ourselves from the way that we perceive things to be the right way. So like, to your point, all the things that you can learn outside of school, right? Which is a lot of my like schooling philosophy. Like, we don't homeschool, we unschool. So my children learn a whole lot with all the different things that they've been exposed to, all the places that they've been, all the people that they've met, all the meetings that they've sat in, all the, trips that we go on, and all of that type of stuff. And you have an opportunity to learn a lot in that space. But then when you take them through what the school considers to be traditional schooling, right, there's things that maybe they don't know or haven't been exposed to, because for me, it's not a part of our everyday life and it's inconsequential to their success. But to the school system, it is. And then you have parents who question their children's intelligence or the way that children learn and things of that sort, because it's being compared to a bullshit system that we don't really see or understand as being bullshit. And I've had these discussions, like my 15-year-old, I don't require her to learn how to spell. I don't. It doesn't matter. She'll never need to learn how to spell. She just won't. Because everything that she types in is going to spell check for her, and she has a dictionary attached to her hip. And so like when I was growing up and I needed to write papers by hand, right? Or I needed to even type stuff and it didn't spell check, that's fine. It's not that she doesn't like, but by nature, her ability to read and write will develop and grow her ability to spell in a lot of cases. But if it never does, it won't matter. The technology of today will never require that from her. That is a concept that is very foreign to someone like my parents, who then question, what am I doing when I'm homeschooling, right? So I think like our ability to detach from the systems that are here and actually independently or collectively assess what our children need to learn and understand in order for them to move on to the next level and be successful, we don't get to have those types of conversations, or we don't get to have those types of opportunities to present, what that looks like for our children going forward.
Well, yeah, I mean, what I think is important is that there's going to be a push for institution building at some point in this conversation. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember Dedrick Sims?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen.
I don't remember him. I talked to him. He's good people's.
Yeah. I don't know if he still lives in Colorado or not, but the guy could have spent a lifetime, fighting against the educational system, but then he just built one of his own. Like he just built his own school, and he outperformed everybody. And they caught him up on some bullshit charter law that said this, that, and the third wasn't quite adding up. And instead of that, says they found a way to screw this black man out of whatever he had going on. But I was there when he had his school operational, and it was absolutely phenomenal. I think that we as parents, first of all, and you also brought something very interesting up, Jice. The parent-child relationship is very interesting. It is very different. I can tell you this. I'm so glad I had all them years working in juvenile corrections and latchkey programs before I became a father, because I had to figure out how to manage kids I couldn't hit. And hitting was something I learned. I think we all did. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all learned hitting. And so I had to figure out how to communicate with children who that was not on the table for. You feel me? And I see that patience coming through with my daughter. except for late at night because my brain don't work. But then during the daytime, you know, I figure out, number one, like you have to I think a major thing that will help us out is understanding like child psychology and brain development, and how sometimes we'll ask a kid to do a task that they literally won't be able to necessarily do yet. Or if they disobey you, it's not because they're being malicious. It's because the frontal lobe is not like developed enough to exert the kind of top-down control long-term that we're asking for, right? And so we filter through the lens of, yo, little badass, disrespectful little ass, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, okay, let's try this again, you know? And I think that these behavioral developmental models, there's a lot of information at our disposal right now. And I think that we need to be ruthless adapters. We need to be people who, you know, take everything from our environments and maximize it. That's what survivors do. And with this information, I think we can just leapfrog over a whole lot of folks. You know what I'm saying? We're given an opportunity in the failure of the system to be exceptional parents. And I think that we need to frame it like that.
But that's just it, my brother and sister. When we understand the historical context and the history of the system is not failing. The system is doing what the system was intended and developed to do.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? To anyone out there in the sound of our voice who's listening and watching us, the purpose of public education was to train students to become skilled workers, you know, while teaching them traditional, so-called traditional core academic disciplines. You see what I'm saying? That first part is what's of most important, right? You're not. So there's a difference between education, vice, training. What Jice is doing is educating her children. What the public school system is doing is training our children,
indoctrinating them, even.
Exactly, right? Getting them used to the system of how life is going to work for them if they are not entrepreneurial in their nature. You understand what I'm saying? Okay, you're gonna have to get up, you have to go here at this certain time, take lunch at this certain time for this amount of time. At the end of the 8 hours, then you're gonna go back home to your family and you're gonna take care of all these other issues and things of that nature. You dig what I'm saying? And so for our people out there who are parents, I would say there are two things that you can do in the immediacy that do not require assistance from anyone. You have what Sister Jice just said, you know, about her daughter, a computer on your hip at all times, right? So take advantage of the opportunity and do some research on the intent or purpose of the American school system. That's number one. And then become more engaged and involved in understanding what your rights are as a parent. Because if you don't understand, your child is an asset for the powers that we allow to be. And they are going to be an asset for as long as they are alive. And so the system has a vested interest in ensuring that your influence is minimized. That's the system's best interest.
It's interesting that you say that because, again, like literally just having the, not opportunity, but the situation come up where I'm putting my, children, my little ones in preschool over the summer. And I said, we'll see how things kind of pan out from there. But this was their first day actually today. And it's interesting that you said that about parents' rights, because just today I had to go and dig a little deeper to learn about my parental rights, right? So if any of you have ever seen or actually spoken to my son, you would know my son has a speech impediment, right? And so I thought he was going to have a lisp, but currently he doesn't enunciate his words well. So he speaks in full sentences, but you can't understand him. And so my daughter translates for him. It's a very cute little thing. At any rate, this is day one, okay? And they come to me and they say, well, does your son have an IEP? Now, they had to tell me what an IEP was because my children have been homeschooled. And I'm like, well, I don't know what an IEP is, but I would imagine that he doesn't because he's not been in the school system before. And so immediately they wanted to have him assessed. And then they wanted to issue him an individualized education plan. And then they told me that I needed to reconsider where he was getting his speech therapy, because I went and found an independent Black speech therapist that he's been working with for the last few months. But they want to remove the independent Black therapist and use their therapist. So when I spoke to her today, she immediately educated me on, you do not have to get an assessment. You do not have to agree to an IEP. She was like, it's basically double dipping, because what the school system gets to do is, whether they receive services or not, the school system gets federal dollars and then also gets Medicare dollars if they issue him speech therapy. So if she's doing his speech therapy, that means the school can't get his Medicaid dollars.
And that's what I'm talking about when I say our children are assets, or are viewed and treated as assets and resources.
This was day one, which almost immediately made me want to go back and be like, this is why I homeschool, right? Like, because yes, like, and had I not asked her that question, like had I just gone along with everything that they told me, she said, don't let them bully you into that. She was like, I've already worked with your son for 3 months. I know that your son does not have a learning disability. He does not have a learning issue. This is really an issue of him being able to properly enunciate. And what she actually told me was that part of that probably comes from the fact that he's the youngest and his next oldest sibling is a small child, and he's listening to her as she's learning to speak. So yes, when he was learning to speak, he's not hearing, all the time the proper pronunciation. Yes. So she was like, don't let them try and tell you that. She was like, that's not any issue that he has. But this is day one. And it to me, this is of a parent who is, actively engaged. And I hate to think about what happens when a parent is not actively engaged, or a parent who couldn't sit out there for 30 minutes and have an in-depth conversation so they can explain to me the situation, take notes so I could go back and have a conversation with someone who I trust, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not rushing off to get to work.
Yeah.
This is a major thing. They tried that with me. People wouldn't know it, but I was born with a stuttering problem. I had a machine gun stutter. Now, I'm on the cusp of the old age and the new age, being born in the 80s. And they used to look at that as a sign of like mental disability if you stutter.
Yeah.
And I remember, having to work through the ability to speak. And I remember the conversations that used to be held with my parents, about, they tried to put me on an individual education program as well. And I just had a guardian angel. Her name was Mrs. Marjorie Pacheco. She was my first Mexican teacher. And it was this crazy dynamic. She was kind of feeding me my answers from behind this white dude who was trying to get me to agree to the individual. My mother wasn't even really consulted at this point. They were going to consult her afterwards. And he asked me, do you want to go on an individualized education program? And Ms. Pacheco was like, and I was like, no, I don't want to do it. And she was like, okay, well, you're going to have to do this and this with the other kids. I was like, I can do it with the other kids. I think I can. And before long, I got bullied. It was really, really bad. But it's just those lessons. You don't realize you navigated this trap. I didn't realize how many traps I navigated until I was out. I didn't realize what I was dealing with until I had gone past that. Then they found out my IQ was high and put me into all these extra programs, which were also racist. Then people weren't even talking about if your kid is a high achiever. Then they get into the other programs that be culturally biased and shit. So I'm in these programs and I'm the only Black kid in there, and they're making me feel dumb because I don't have the same cultural references as they do. So it's a very interesting thing, whether your child is average or gifted. There's these traps to navigate, right? And so I think that we as parents got to tap into that old primal, I'll kill a lion if I have to kind of ferocity, right? And the lion before us today is a system with institutionally racist biases that cannot wait to put your kid on a school to prison pipeline. That's the lion of today, right? Mm-hmm. And we have a situation where, unfortunately, most of us are relying on our historical enemy to educate us. That's just what it is, right? Malcolm tried to get us out of that situation. Here the fuck we are. And so now we have to turn this into a scrapyard what works in this junkyard, because there's a lot of sharp objects trying to kill my kid. Let me get into the scrapyard beforehand. Let me see if I can repurpose this and retrofit this and see if I can form a relationship here. A lot of this is very relational, like a lot of this navigational stuff. And then there's community resources. This cannot be understated. The thing that got me to college was no thing in the freaking public school system. It was Pensile McCrae, Ethnic College Counseling Center. When Miss McCrae would hold these black college tours every 2 years, she would put together an HBCU bus tour. And all those black kids from all over the freaking country, all over the city, would go all over the South and get to see and walk on and talk to people at HBCUs, which got me linked up with the Jack and Jill people, which got me in the Botillion, which made me work harder to get my grades higher. But this was a black community resource for education, and we have those. So parents, we gotta use the community to counterbalance the miseducation. Because at ECCC, that's when I learned about Africans in the pyramids. At ECCC, that's when I learned about Nubia. That's when I learned about black folks traveling across the ocean. You feel me? So this is one of the major things, bringing all these resources to counterbalance what the school's trying to do.
Yeah, but I want to go back to something that you mentioned, though, Theo, which was that kind of duality, right? Like there is the system, and that part is true, but there is also the responsibility of us as a community and us as a people. And what I see, there's a whole lot of breakdown when we think about how we are going to really address and help our youth going 7 generations forward, right? And so I'm going to just kind of like throw up a couple of thoughts, because one is niggas coming out the hood, helping out with these kids, but they haven't actually really worked on themselves and cultivated themselves. And so you see like grown-ass men who are, want to be down with the little, with the 15 and 16 and 17. Right. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, because, I was in the hood too, homie. Like, bro, you still in the hood. Like, you haven't really elevated yourself too much further. And so, like, not that I don't appreciate the sentiment, but like we have, it's almost like the epitome of children still raising children, right? And so their mentality is so messed up. I remember earlier last summer, watching this community meeting of grown-ass men trying to go at each other's throats, like, bro, I'll fuck you up. I need to, go, right? Because it's children mentalities with good hearts in the right place, but they don't got all they ducks in a row, in that space, right? Then you got people like Kevin Samuels, to your point, Lethal, where you were mentioning like, the system that removes parents and really doesn't value Black families, right? It doesn't value the familial unit for families to grow and thrive and also be able to access resources and assistance. And that could get into a whole bigger thing about what the average Black person is actually making in this country, which ain't shit. And thinking about why Black people even need this type of assistance. But then you got people like Kevin Samuels who demonize single mothers, and single mothers sometimes don't have access to resources or make it seem like single mothers are just completely disposable. But single mothers are the ones out here raising the kids in a lot of instances. And so then to discourage men from even thinking about being in a relationship with a single mother because she is, basically, the ability to discard her, or she's not worthwhile in your concept, your white ass concept
of value of high value,
right? Yeah. A very, very white concept of value, right? Just continues to further place a divide in how Black men and Black women come together in order to create strong family units, because it doesn't necessarily have to take the biological father. But what happens if a mother who is elevating herself, who has gotten her degrees, who has strived to get a higher paying job, comes together with a Black man who is hardworking, and what can that do to move a generation forward? And you got men like Kevin Samuels who say, fuck all that, because, it doesn't look good for your image, your white ass image that you're trying to create, right? And so I think like there's these different levels and these different facets of what's happening with us from a 7-generational lens, and thinking about how, and really, in my opinion, how perilous of a situation our next generation and our couple of generations really are, because they really don't have a lot of guidance or strong value systems that are inside of our communities in order to help them think about how to move forward. So, I think we're looking in
It is dire to a certain extent. I don't know if y'all follow the work of this guy named Gabor Mate. He is a child psychologist who's written some pretty interesting books about how to raise kids. Take some of it with a grain of salt, but one thing I found valuable was this: the kid will either be peer bonded or parent bonded, and they'll of course have both. But whichever one dominates will dictate the outcomes of the kid's life, right? If for whatever reason the parent has to be absent for, even if it is because they're working double hard, the very opposite of lazy, then that peer bonding thing becomes dangerous, especially within our culture. I hate to say this, but that rap shit matters. The music be showing up. I have had to deal with this. I remember this time, and I didn't find out later what was wrong in this girl's home. But she was up here causing other fights and shit like that. And we sat her down, and she literally, when this song was out, she screamed, "I don't care what y'all tell me. 100 motherfuckers can't tell me nothing." I later found out that both of her parents were incarcerated and that she was staying with her grandmother. And her grandmother was so old, there's not a lot that she could do. She was peer bonded. And the things that was going on the playground, the things that was being said between the kids, that was her greatest influence. The kids who make it out, the kids who end up becoming the outliers, the ones who end up breaking through, they're parent bonded, right? They're bonded with, and if you talk to anybody who deals with gangsters, they'll tell you the most important factor in breaking a kid out the hood is a healthy relationship with an adult. You know what I'm saying? Either you're peer bonded or you're parent bonded. And that horizontal, I remember the temptation of not listening to my father because of what these little ignorant niggas on the playground. I really thought these niggas knew better than my dad. I really thought they did. Like bullshit. I'm looking at one of the niggas I seen, he was homeless because of his decisions, right? He probably had a broke home situation, but that's very important to understand. If we understand these two dynamics, I believe we're going to make a lot better decisions. Number one, either you're parent bonded or peer bonded. And two, you have to understand that a child's brain development ain't necessarily where you want to ask the child to perform at this point. It is actually a neurological thing sometimes. If you can remember those two things, you can navigate a lot of shit and make sure that you invest in that bond with the kid, that emotionally, not just talking, but emotionally, they're tighter to you than they are to their peers, or else that bullshit in our culture will drag them off.
I hear that. I'm literally walking through that with my teenager right now. I will be the first to say I have called my parents and apologized for my behavior as a child. Like, because a teenager will make you really see all the things that you did as a kid and how much bullshit your parents had to put up with. Mine had to put up with a whole lot.
So we did a episode a few seasons ago and whatnot. I forget what the topic was, but we were talking about. I think it was we were talking about ownership. You know what I'm saying? In our communities, and just ownership overall, and in the sense of self-agency, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that what we're talking about now, in the direction that we've gone, can be summed up and put in that bag as well, right? This is a situation where we have to take ownership, and as time is winding down for our episode here.
Yeah, we got 5 minutes.
Yeah. I want to just
Is this your mindset moment?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We're in the mindset movement portion. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah. I want to toss this out, right? In shop talk, we would always talk about how we have hoods, we don't have neighborhoods. And we said that because we didn't view each other as neighbors, and we also threw in there, how wrong it was for this motto or mantra of snitches get stitches, right? It's not snitching if you are taking ownership of your community and reporting a crime. It's snitching
if you was in the crime.
Exactly. If you were a part of the crime, trying to save your skin by selling out those who were involved in it with you. You understand what I'm saying? And so that same mindset, right, that we were promoting with regards to the physical space, the physical land, the area, the landmass, the neighborhood, the hood, right? We need to do that same thing, man, with our children, because we're talking about our legacy and we're talking about the survivability of our people. Understand what I'm saying? And we need to take ownership of that. I'll tell you straight up. I told a group of friends of mine a few years ago, and this is when I first returned to the country from being overseas. And I told them, I said, you know, I would take it as a personal insult as patriarch in my family for my nephews to view an individual like a Kevin Garnett, or Allen Iverson, or Charles Barkley, or Shaquille O'Neal, or any other entertainer, whether it be sports entertainment or theatrical entertainment, to view them as a more influential role model than myself. Because I'm the one that they can touch. I'm the one that they can physically hold on to and reach out to and have a conversation with. And so I want to throw it back to the elders and the ancestors with this closing remark right here. Train a child in the way they should go, but make sure that you're also going in that same way.
Well, now, yeah, kids will not do as you say; they will do as you do.
Exactly, which is the reason why my nephews are in the great positions that they're in. One of them is now serving in the Marine Corps.
Right. I mean, it's true, man. The way kids' brains are set up, they're mimics. Mimic. You know what I mean? Like, the reason why I work out every day is literally because I saw my father before the sun rose working out every single day. Like, I saw him preserve his youth while his peers got old. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are the things that I witnessed. If he would have told me that, it wouldn't have made no sense to me. I saw him do that, and that's what I do now. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think, what was that quote? My mindset moment is this. Yes, the best way to discipline your children is to make them your disciple. That's literally what it means, right? You make your children your disciple. That's how you discipline them. Back in the day, you took on the profession of your father. You know, if your father was a freaking blacksmith, that's what you did. You were his apprentice. You know, if your father made boats, that's what you did. If your father was a fisherman, that's what you did. You know what I mean? And so that is because that's how humans are. So when people be like, I'm gonna whoop this little nigga ass if he always see you chiefing blunts, if he always see you screaming, if he always see you yelling, if he always see you playing video games, he'll be your disciple whether you want him to be or not. She'll be a disciple whether you want her to be or not. Understand that you have to be a conscious, literal, like you have to be the master in that way, like not the slave master, but like the sensei. You know what I mean? You know, and that's the best way to discipline a kid. Make them your disciple, and they'll follow your footsteps. So that's just what that reminded me of, bro. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and I guess my thoughts. First, I hope that we come back around at some point to talk about the mental health of our youth, because I think it's really important to think about what they are going through mentally. And our community historically has not been able to discuss mental health and doesn't discuss mental health, right? And so I think as I'm watching a lot of adults kind of go through their own mental health journeys, myself included, you know, all constantly thinking about things that, you know, cause anxiety or different types of, you know, issues like, you know, the more you see a lot of narcissism in our community and other things like that. And I think we need to talk about that. But I also think that we need to look at it from that youth perspective. So my hope is that we come back and talk about that, because I think that's certainly something that should be addressed from a 7-generational lens. But I would say my mindset moment is probably around the idea that we have to decolonize. Like, I think in general, we cannot continue to look at our children and raise and rear our children or hold our children to the expectations of these white standards. And I think it takes some time to undo the ideas about how learning should take place, what is needed for them to be successful in life. And in that same space, learn to advocate for our children, right? Learn to stand up and advocate for them. So, in a system that is operating, to your point, lethal, as it should, the system is not built for them. And so as long as we continue to put them into that system, whether it's willfully or whether it is by force based off of our circumstance, as long as we continue to put our children inside of that system, I think that we have no choice but to make sure that we are advocating on behalf of our children, and that we come together as a community to advocate when it's necessary. And that was something that we started when we were first doing Coolon, the homeschool village co-op, and we talked about that even in shop talk, before, is, parents shouldn't be walking into the school by themselves, not feeling like they have any support system, right? And so if that means you got to start calling on some folks to come down with you, but I want to say something to leaders, any leaders that may be out there listening, is you can't put that call out there and then not back it up. I have a friend right now, a really good friend of mine who lost her son in March. And, part of her anger is that so many community leaders here kept saying, call me, let me know what you need. Call me, right? And it becomes this thing, yeah, I got you. Call me, hit me up, let me know. Hit me in my messages, I got you. And she said, I called and I called and I called. And I can't tell you how many times that's come to me, where I don't run youth programming. I don't run anything that is for the youth. I don't run advocacy for the youth. I've had people in my own messages that have said that they don't know where else to go because people in our community who claim to be for and about the kids, who claim to be for parental advocacy, for youth and against violence and against and for youth empowerment and these sorts of things, have not actually stepped up to the call. And so they get online and they like to showboat, and then they don't come down to do the actual real work of stepping in when parents are needing help with dealing with the school system and with other things. And so, I don't have the full details. I don't admonish any parents of any responsibility when, children go, when situations happen with children. Parents have some responsibility, just like other people in the community have responsibility. But I think it's important as leaders with boots on the ground that we do not make empty promises to any parts of our people. Whether it's parents, in my case, whether it's entrepreneurs, we can't make empty promises. We don't have that luxury. You muted yourself. You're still muted.
My bad. Yo, I appreciate that. I spoke to some of those leaders that are being referred to. Last summer specifically, yeah, man, that shit's a very tough position to be in, right? Because there will be a situation where you can't save everybody. Just mathematically, you can't do it. And there are things that, like, it's almost like when you step up to the plate, one of the things that stops people is that there will be a failure somewhere. It just will. And that failure probably hurts worse than anything. I wish I knew who that sis was. Like we don't run a youth program no more, but I certainly wish every time I hear a story like that, I wish we still did, you know what I'm saying? And that's just one of them situations where, it was hard to do anything last year anyway, but it's just a brief reminder, the working community is character building. It really is. Like, you can't be a flake and an activist at the same time, not an effective one. You can't be a flake. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to be like having integrity. You say it, you do it. You say it, you do it. You say you're going to be there, motherfucking be there.
And somebody in the comments says some people are burnt out, and then burnt out people need to sit down. And I don't say that like disrespectful, like I really mean that shit. Like just sit down.
You have to. You absolutely
sit
have
down for a minute. Take care of yourself. Take care of your mental health. Grow to your next level. Grow to your next, stage. Use the community around you, but sit down because you do more damage when you say that you're going to do something and you don't. Right? The Black community suffers from trust issues. I know we're over our time, so I'm gonna stop. But the Black community suffers already from trust issues from a variety of reasons, and all of them for good reasons. And when we add to that trust issue where they can't trust the systems, they can't trust the white folks, and they also can't trust us, and they can't trust the community leaders. But those folks rarely are burnt out to come and show their face and get a lot of internet clout. They're rarely burnt out to come and do a speech or get on a panel or make sure that they're seen somewhere. So you can't do that. If you're burnt out, be burnt out, and then rejuvenate and come back, right? Because I think sometimes we struggle with that. I've struggled with that. I've struggled with coming out and then being able to come back, right? Like I've got to be able to take care of me, and then I've got to know that doesn't mean that I can't step back into the type of activism that I participate in order for me to take care of myself. What I can't do is I can't make empty promises. That I can't do.
Yeah, so those people who call themselves burnt out and refusing to step aside, that's how you know they're in it for the wrong reason. You understand what I'm saying? They're just in it for the wrong reason, and we can't allow that. We did an episode on sellouts, I believe, right? And I stand by what I said then. We have to ostracize them. You understand what I'm saying? Cast them out. You understand what I'm saying? That's it. Get rid of them. Kick them to the curb. Bye-bye. See you later. You understand?
I would have to disagree with that approach on every occasion.
Not on every occasion, but understand what I'm saying. Understand what I'm saying. When you have someone, and I'm not going to say their name. Anybody out there can go look it up for themselves. But when you have someone who's telling a Black mother whose 12-year-old child was shot dead within 2 seconds of a response, that she cannot be angry, that she cannot express that anger, that she should let the forces and the system responsible for the murder of her child off the hook because of their fragility, that's an individual that needs to be kicked to the curb.
I understand what you're saying.
Those are individuals who need to be told, listen, you are doing more harm. Because see, here's our problem. This can be another episode, something else we can talk about, right? We have to stop caring more about the oppressor's system and how they feel in the system that they've constructed, right? Over how we are feeling the impacts of that. You understand what I'm saying? It is human. It is natural. It is okay to say to the public, fuck you. Y'all know what y'all set up. And if you don't know what you set up, that is not my fault. So it's not going to be my responsibility.
Yeah, I feel you on that.
All right, y'all. So we're on that note.
It's been 7 generations Black.
Today, right? But come back next week because we got more to talk about. I think we're gonna have to come back and talk about other aspects of parenting because I think it's important. But yeah, shout out to H and Shay who can't be with us today, but we'll be back next Tuesday, same time. Make sure you share this out. Make sure that you like. And until then, keep hustling for your 7 generations Black.
Peace and love, everyone.
Bye-bye.